American Psycho, directed by Mary Herron, adapted from the book by Bret Easton Ellis. Patrick Bateman is a Wall Street banker from the late 80s whose flesh is the only human thing about him. Everything else is a copy of the consumerist culture that orbits him.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
They're okay.
When the film was originally released, it sparked outrage from protesters who felt it glorified misogyny and graphic violence. While these elements are featured in the story, they are meant to satirize the absurd characters that behave in accordance to them and by no means encourage the viewer to take them at face value. The sequence where Patrick lists his morning routine and the degree of importance that he places on each of his beauty products just shows how buffoonish his priorities are and how far down the hole of capitalism he really is. Despite being a homicidal maniac to his core, Patrick Bateman convinces everyone around him that he's a functioning member of society because his motivation is linked towards appearances. Nothing that he does is intrinsic, which reflects his empty identity. There are several instances where he confesses his most brutal acts to just complete strangers. There's even one scene where he confesses several murders to his personal lawyer. However, with each confession, he gets the same flat response, where people think he's simply being eccentric. Because no one really notices who Patrick really is, it just goes to show how pathetic his character is. You can see these brutal slayings as an analogy of how powerful figures see those that they deem lower than them, simply as disposable as corpses. Ultimately, this film pokes fun at masculinity within Wall Street at the time and how sensitive it was towards anything that made it feel insecure. Directly after the infamous business card scene, Bateman's embarrassment causes him to slaughter a homeless man for no good reason other than to feel superior. Similarly, when his date with his secretary gets derailed by a voicemail from his girlfriend, it immediately causes him to dismiss the secretary purely out of shame. If you do decide to go see this film, avoid the literal interpretation that these heightened goons are above the law, but instead are examples of what happens when we become more preoccupied with things rather than people.